Europe should be brave enough to stand up with the people of Iran and join the American government to take a strong action and allow people of Iran to make decisions about their future. Really, people living in their safety and luxury in the UK, in America, in the West, and saying that let's Iranian people overthrow a regime with guns and bullets, with nuclear weapon, with bare hand.
You cannot take the belt and boot to make someone love you and be content living under your protection or under your rule. It's either crown or the turban.
Hello and welcome to the Fourcast. Iran's foreign minister says that the situation is now under total control, although reports from inside the country suggest something very different. Human rights groups say that hundreds have been killed, more than 10,000 arrested, as authorities intensify their crackdown on nationwide protests. Verifying information remains extremely difficult given the near total internet blackout from the regime. Meanwhile, President Trump says that Tehran is ready to negotiate with the United States after warning that he is considering very strong military action, without going into details. In response, Iran has said it is ready for war, but also for dialogue if the United States does intervene. So has the violence succeeded in silencing the protests, or is something else unfolding beneath the surface? Today we speak with Masih Alinejad, Iranian American journalist and activist, and later on we'll be joined by Narguess Farzad, senior lecturer in Persian Studies at SOAS, to understand what really is happening inside Iran. Let's go to you first, Masih. Thanks very much for coming on the program. What are you hearing from your contacts on the ground in Iran?
A massacre is taking place in Iran. It is a massacre. When I hear from people who have access to Starlink, I see from their voices, from their messages, that they are scared while they're witnessing how people are getting killed in front of their eyes. These are the people that I've never seen that being like scared and begging for outside help. These are the activists that I'm in touch with them. They're saying that hour by hour, the number of those who have been killed increased. You see the videos that we are receiving from people inside Iran, that how they put the lifeless body of those who have been killed, who have been shot in their chest, in their heart, like on the top of each other. And the regime even asked the family members to pay money to get the dead body back. So I believe that people, they actually say that, not me, people inside Iran say that the regime is like using military weapon to control the unrest, which I don't call it unrest anymore. This is a revolution. So for millions of people right now, this is a crucial moment. If they don't receive any help, believe me, from outside Iran, the regime will continue to slaughter innocent and unarmed people.
There have been reports, Masih, of doctors in hospitals treating dozens, if not hundreds of patients, many of them with shot wounds to their eyes and to their head.
Look, the sources inside Iran telling us it's thousands have been killed because of internet blackout, absolutely darkness. So verifying and gathering information is not easy. But we know that the real number is higher than what we hearing from Iran. And what people telling us that the IRGC members, security forces, targeting people, like in their heart, blinding people because they want to create fear. They are actually targeting teenagers because they know that teenagers are the one that they have no fear.
Right. So the government, the regime is saying that actually the numbers of protesters has decreased. These are also some of the other reports we're getting. And that actually the kind of climate of fear and repression, for now at least, seems to be working to some extent. Do you think that's accurate or not?
It's not accurate. First of all, because they have guns and bullets. So they're even using the mosques, all the mosques in Iran to warn people to announce that if you don't leave the streets right now, we shoot you. So they're using all kind of military weapons and tools to scare them, to oppress them. And even they cut the electricity in Iran to, hide the crime and the crowd. But what happened? People used the light of their mobile phone, their cell phone. It's beautiful to see how desperately people want the rest of the world to see that they are taking to the street, to see the crowd, to see the determination of these people who are willing to end this regime. And let me be very, very clear. When still some media are hesitating to talk about unprecedented uprising in Iran, what do you expect? What do you expect when you see that some like leaders of free world still hesitating to talk about the demand of Iranians because President Trump said that he's going to kill the one killing innocent protesters. So the leaders, the UK Prime Minister, the President Macron, like the leaders of free world are absolutely quiet. So of course that is going to help Iranian regime to control the uprising inside the country.
But the people inside the country won't necessarily hear what the likes of Macron or Starmer are not saying, right? If there's an internet blackout, to what extent do they even know what's going on outside in the rest of the world regarding their revolution?
That's a good point. But let me tell you something. Thanks to Elon Musk, now many activists and dissidents have access to social media, to internet, and they are the one that mobilizing the gathering. So we thankfully are able to communicate with people inside Iran. And more important than this, whether they hear or not, the leaders of free world should do the right thing. The history will judge them. People are being trapped. Like we are like the East Germany in Iran. Yes, maybe not the whole population can hear what President Macron and Prime Minister Keir Starmer says, but they have the duty to take actions. If they take actions, then people see it.
Okay, but
how? By targeting those who order massacre, by targeting the members of Revolutionary Guards, killing them. This is a war. This is a war, my brother. The Islamic Republic waged a war against innocent people. Enough of the statements. I don't mean that Prime Minister of the UK or leaders of Germany, leaders of France and free world G7 leaders to make a statement. Enough of empty words and condemnations doesn't save lives.
Okay.
I mean actions.
Right, but there are also sanctions in place from European countries as well as, of course, from the United States. And we know that President Trump is kind of toying with the idea of military intervention. Are you saying that you would like to see the likes of Britain and France or Germany get involved militarily on the side of the Iranian people right now?
It's not the West intervening or using military weapons against innocent people. It is the Islamic Republic that invaded Iran. I don't really understand. When I saw the UK Prime Minister was quite like trying to stay away from President Trump's action against Maduro's regime, I was like, you have to see the people of Venezuela celebrating the arrest of Maduro. Why? Because he was not a president, a legitimate president. He is a criminal.
Yes.
This is the same scenario. But Ali Khamenei is a terrorist.
Right. But Masih, the same people who applauded what President Trump was doing in Venezuela, including many Venezuelans, were then very upset that actually they took Maduro out of the country and they're putting him on trial. But the rest of the regime in Caracas is still very much in place. Are you afraid? Are you afraid? Are your colleagues afraid who are activists that the same thing could happen here, that Khamenei, the supreme leader, could disappear, either because he's very old or because someone nabs him, or, and then the regime stays in place? All those structures that have spent so many years entrenching themselves in Iran will carry on regardless.
That is why I strongly believe that the Europe should be brave enough to stand up with the people of Iran and join the American government to take a strong action and allow people of Iran to make decision about their future. What we want is very clear, fair and free election. But now, the immediate help, the urgent help is absolutely clear. With what happening in Iran, the immediate reaction should be helping the people of Iran
How?
to just stop the killing. Stop
But
the killing.
how?
I don't think this is too much to ask.
Yeah, but
Stop
how?
the killing. Military action against the Revolutionary Guard base. Military action against Ali Khamenei. This is the dream of millions of people, to see Ali Khamenei being captured, and we want to see him in international court. And I'm telling you, this is not called intervention. This is Ali Khamenei actually sending killers here in United States of America to get rid of U.S. officials. I myself survived 3 assassination plots. What do you expect me? Negotiate with Ali Khamenei? Of course I want to get rid of him. This is the government sending killers on the UK soil. They targeted UK citizens on UK soil. Transnational repression is a tool in the hand of this regime. So what I expect the Europeans to be brave enough, take action against a terrorist regime. Why the UK government do not designate Revolutionary Guards as a terrorist organization? Why? Is that too much to ask for Prime Minister of the UK to join the G7 leaders and take action right now? If you don't want to do military action, at least name them, who they are.
Let me ask you
terrorist organization.
Let me ask you something else. So during the so-called 12-day war last June, when Israel and Iran had this ballistic missile exchange, the Americans got involved very briefly. I am told, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm told that on the streets of Tehran, people who hated the regime did not like the idea that Israel was trying to somehow weaken that regime with American help. They would much rather do it themselves. So actually, that was slightly counterproductive. Is that true?
Look, of course we want to do it by ourselves. Of course we want to overthrow the regime by ourselves and with our own hand. But really, people living in their safety and luxury, freedom in the UK, in America, in the West, and saying that let Iranian people overthrow a regime with guns and bullets, with nuclear weapon, with bare hand? Is that real thing that you demand, Iranians? Who said that people with empty hand can overthrow a regime that target the US officials on US soil, the UK citizen on more than 500 non-Iranians and Iranians were the target of the same regime, whether being assassinated or kidnapped beyond the Islamic Republic.
But I think
border.
but I think there is a nuanced opinion there, isn't there? I mean, I myself spoke when I was presenting this program from Tel Aviv. I spoke to quite a few Iranians inside Iran during that war who said, we don't like this regime. We really want them, rid, but we don't want the Americans or the Israelis to do it for us. We have to do this ourselves, even if it involves waiting a few more months or years. That's what they told me.
Now you're saying people are saying even if it involves another massacre. In bloody November, they shut down the internet. 1,500 innocent protesters got killed. What happened? They couldn't overthrow the regime with bare hand, empty hands. And 2022 people took to the street when Masih Alinejad was killed for the crime of simply showing a bit of her hair. Like, listen, this hair got her killed. And immediately women took to the street, shoulder to shoulder with their brothers, chanting against the entire regime. This time, 700 people got killed. 20,000 people got arrested. So now again, people took back to the street. I am telling you, in 47 years, 6 major uprisings took place in Iran. All of them faced massacre. So regime change is not being imposed on us Iranian people by the Israeli government or the US government at all. This is the demand of people who took to the street in 6 major uprisings, but they faced massacre. So basically, we did everything. We tried everything. We even voted for so-called reformists, having the hope of reforming this regime. We even took to the street and we faced guns and bullets. So we tried everything. We tried negotiation with this regime. So now the time has come to treat this regime as a terrorist organization and help these people to get rid of the Islamic Republic. And believe me, an Iran without the Islamic Republic is not just a help to people of Iran. You are protecting democracy. You're protecting your own value. So we are actually guaranteeing global security because the Islamic Republic is the biggest sponsor of terrorism, is the biggest threat to the Western values and to the region and to its own people.
I mean, you mentioned all these other, uprisings, protests, revolutions against the regime that have failed. What makes you think that this time round, and it does seem to be more brutal in its response than previous ones, even though they were bad as well. What makes you think that this time round could be different?
I strongly believe the fear is gone. The fear is gone. It is not a protest anymore. It is a revolution. And people say it loud. When they say that we are ready, when they open their arms and they say, shoot us, but we're not going back home, it is a revolution. But I never say that these people can win without the help of the free world. And I want to talk directly to the leaders of free world that this is not a charity to help unarmed people to bring down a terrorist regime. Be united the way that dictators are united. Unfortunately, Putin, Maduro, Khamenei, China, they are more united than the G7 leaders.
If, let's imagine, the crowds do go home because they are too frightened, even though they hate this regime, they don't want to die on the streets. If that were to happen, what happens then?
Look, people, they say that they are ready to die for the cause, for bringing Islamic Republic down. I am ready to die for the same cause. This is the true voice of Iranian that you hear from all over the across Iran, more than 100 cities. You hear that people say we are ready to die to get rid of one of the most barbaric Islamist terrorist regime. Where is Keir Starmer? Where is President Macron? Where is Europe? Where is G7 leaders? That should be your question. You should not ask us unarmed people, me surviving 3 assassinations plus, hey, Masih, how if you get scared? And of course I'm scared. But the time has come to overcome our fear and make a brave decision. My brother, my heart is broken when I get bombarded by videos of people in Iran saying to me that they're going to the streets and they're not sure whether they're going to come back or not. And when I go to the media, they ask me, oh, no, my God, you're asking President Trump. I'm not asking them. This is their duty. This is the duty of free world to take action when a terrorist regime targeting unarmed people. And I want to tell you, I don't know what's going to even happen to me. I'm not sure what's going to happen to my family because I'm not in touch with them. No landline, no cell phone, no internet. But I know the history will judge those leaders who had the opportunity to take action against Ali Khamenei and his gang of killers, but they decided to keep silent. At least the Europe, if you don't want to do military action, let President Trump do the difficult part of your job, but kick out the Islamic Republic diplomats from your own soil. They should not have the privilege of diplomacy. They should not enjoy freedom on your soil while my brothers and sisters getting killed in Iran. Why their relative and children walking freely in the UK? Why they are enjoying freedom in America while my brothers and sisters getting killed in Iran? So for us, we don't ask you to help us. We ask you to stand up and do the brave thing when it comes to end terrorism. That's it. So simple.
All right. I hear your passion. We're going to leave it there. Masih Alinejad, thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, let's turn now to Narguess Farzad, who's a senior lecturer in Persian Studies at SOAS. Narguess, it's great to have you on the podcast. I mean, what we just heard there from Masih Alinejad, what we've seen, as much as we can see anything at all, is deeply, deeply upsetting. Put this into some kind of context, because we know there have been waves of protests, waves of rage, temptations at revolution before, but they all seem to have failed. Is this going to be any different?
I think it feels like just hacking away at a rather nasty, toxic, nefarious enemy, if you like. This revolution, this uprising may not be the final one, but I think, every single one will just remind people that you cannot rule over whole, caged birds. These are young people who have aspirations, who look at their neighboring countries. They're really not asking for very much. They're incredibly patriotic. Many of them are spiritual. They just want a tiny bit, an iota of freedom.
Right. And one thing that also struck me about these protests, and again, there's always the caveat that we're not getting the full picture because of the internet blockout, but some things are getting through. And mosques being burnt down for the first time. So the rage from the street being directed not just at the regime and the clerics who represent it, but Islam itself, if you like. Is that new?
These mosques are not sanctuaries for the abused, for the fleeing young unarmed people, as romantically one might assume. Many of them are little depots, places that harbor supporters of the state. And I don't mean a farmer supporter of the state. I think I would never pretend that out of a 90 million population of Iran, every single one of predominant majority is against a clerical regime. But the mosques that they burn are associated, of course, one may go off, accidentally, but often they are symbols of oppression.
Iranians are very proud of their levels of education, the highest number of PhDs in the Middle East, lots of great universities. It is a highly educated, highly literate, highly eloquent population that I guess feels now that, they've run out of road, that they want to be treated with a degree of dignity. And I just wonder whether these protests, which are both economic and social and political, all the streams that were there before and all the previous bouts of unrest have finally come together.
And also don't forget that despite all the restrictions, they are not unaware of what goes on in the rest of the world. They travel, they go to Dubai, they go to Qatar, they go to Turkey, often, they go to Central Asia, and they see that the same age group, their peers, how they are progressing, what they have, and they have been held back. And goodness knows where Iran would have been had the young entrepreneurs, how these amazing young people that you have just listed could have just had a tiny bit of ability to move on without being, oppressed, held back by sanctions, etc., that never harm the top echelons. It always gets the guy in the street, and their own, who just do not allow them a tiny bit of space to breathe. And of course, this is, perhaps it's easier to rule over a mass of uneducated, ignorant, the unconnected population. It's very hard to, you have these young people who have nuclear ambitions, the fact that Iranians that join all these maths Olympiads, gold medal after gold medal after gold medal, all of those happen. But then when you punish them, when you summon, when you punish and you jail a human rights activist, you add corporal punishment on that. Beating, public lashing. This is what the Iranians have had enough of. They don't want to run away. They're not going to millions of them want to go and live anywhere else. No, they have paradise at home, but the doors of this paradise, or even just the little veranda of this paradise, is not open to them.
And I mean, it really struck me also that just before the latest bout of unrest, there were scenes of kind of relative liberty on the streets of Tehran, especially. People dancing, women not wearing the hijab. They had sort of pop-up music bands. And, whoever put this stuff on the internet was saying, look, this is what life can look like. And it struck me that after the protest triggered by the killing, the murder of Masih Amini a few years ago, that the regime kind of loosened the reins after the initial repression a little bit.
Yes.
And of course, one of the reports has been that in recent weeks, again, the regime tried to be slightly more reformist. And then the protesters saw a weakness here, and being fed up, they took more than the regime thought they should take. And now we have this brutal response. My question is the lesson for the regime that the only thing that really works is total brutality?
I think they certainly try that. You see, it's a little bit of give and take. The regime is continuously does its cost-benefit analysis to see, just let them have a tiny little bit of breathing space. And because the biggest force at the moment of discontent is the financial pressure, the fact that, you go to a supermarket and by the time you've picked something off the shelf at one quoted price, by the time you get to the till, the price has changed. It's seriously that bad. So they sort of decide, okay, let's pick and choose. Let's give them a tiny little bit of freedom. And it is controlled. I mean, these Iranian girls haven't suddenly all started,
Sure.
rollerblading in their bikinis. It is measured. So they do this because they're not fools. They do have to keep this massive population content somehow. But the whole country, it's been a perfect storm for these young people, and not just young, for all those who really had it up to here. It's a perfect storm of financial pressure, and serious financial pressure. I mean, the wealthy people are beginning to feel the pinch. Never mind those who are, living in hovels and in their, cardboard cities. And the fact that suddenly they thought maybe the world is changing. Maybe when, what's happened in Venezuela, elsewhere, maybe they thought they could just ride this wave. But the regime is not going to give up. They are not going to give up.
So if they prevail, and of course the regime is claiming that they're in charge, the streets are under control, the crowds are diminishing, which is something that my previous speaker has denied is taking place. But if they're right, what happens to Iranians? What happens to your friends and family still in Iran after all these people have been killed and locked up and executed?
Yes. I think it will just thicken the file of grievances, and it will, one day it could explode in a far more alarming way. But at the moment, of course, you cannot, these young people are made of flesh and blood, and how many evenings can they come and face live bullets and plastic bullets and brutality?
So you don't think this is it?
I don't think this. I think it will subside a little. They're exhausted, but it's not going to go away. I don't think it has diminished, but maybe those with how long can you have tens of thousands pour into the streets? They have to live, they have to go home. And don't forget, they have parents who might say, I can't bear, I have lost, 2 children already. I'm not going to let you go out. It might subside. It's not going to go away. As I said, you cannot take the belt and boot to make someone love you and be content living under your protection or under your rule. It will happen. The danger, of course, is if there is somehow a signal is sent to Iran, the sense of negotiations. Iran always loves that because it will buy it time. Sure. It will just allow it to clamp down further, identify, execute more, and, frighten them. But it's not going to go back. You cannot have caged eagles and caged tigers.
So, my previous speaker, Masih Alinejad, said, and she was very outspoken. She said, Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Donald Trump, you got to do something now. Enough of the statements. You can't sit on the sidelines. And we know that Trump has been toying with the idea of intervening, but also toying with the idea of negotiations. So in terms of any sense you can make from the international contribution to all this, is that helping the protests or not?
I think what is very dangerous is to dangle this carrot in front of them and give them hope, and then end up...
The carrot of intervention.
Exactly. And then not do anything about it and then negotiate. Of course, we're not fools. Of course, British foreign policy or US or France is not, they might like Persian poetry and the films in our festivals, but they have their own interest to look at it. What's interesting is in Iran, there have been a few blogs coming out talking about, addressing President Trump and saying you're about to celebrate 250th anniversary of independence. Remember who helped you. Think of the friend who helped you. I think Lafayette, they keep, if I'm not very good on my American history, but this name saying, there is his statue. Don't forget that big pictures, you overthrew the rule of the mightiest empire of the time with help of outsiders. However, it is dangerous. External, I'm trying to think in my lifetime, I was thinking, what's happened? Was it Uganda? Was it Kosovo? I can't think of other nations where foreign intervention helped, and Kosovo still lingers.
So I'm still confused, and maybe you can help me here. Last June, the 12-day war, right? So the Americans get involved on the side of the Israelis. They take out these nuclear facilities. There's a lot of debate about how effective that was. And I spoke to lots of Iranians inside Iran on my program who were telling me, we don't want the Americans to intervene. We will do this ourselves. And then there are other Iranians who told me, no, we do want the Americans to intervene because we can't do it ourselves. So which is true?
Well, it's very interesting what Israel did with support of US cover. They took out these military figures who could have, the next stage could be a military coup. The IRGC might think, right, well, just wait, Ayatollah Khamenei is not going to live forever. It's also, they took out some of the people, as President Trump himself in previous term of office took out Qasem Soleimani, the one man that many Iranians thought.
And it made very little difference.
And but I think perhaps a military intervention like that might also help others who we might think is allied. I'm not sure how happy Turkey or Pakistan or other, or even, other countries in the Persian Gulf would be for a military ruler in Iran who might show an olive branch to the people, saying you can wear whatever you want, have your entrepreneurial businesses if you want, and this is, we will rebuild you, we will rescue you. That might be a worse transition for some. But then again, you and I lived in a time when Greece had a military ruler. Portugal had. We don't even think about it. But the danger is Iranians are so suspicious of external. Why? They think, okay, this momentarily gave them reprieve from these nasty military figures. But why did they do that? Was it because they had ambitions of their own? And it's better to have a clerical Iran than a military ruled Iran.
Right, which brings me to comparisons with the Shah and the revolution against him. And I want to ask you about the Shah's son in a minute. But first of all, the revolution in 78, 79, how different was that to what we might be seeing right now?
The main difference was that the people were quite comfortable. They had good lives, while Wilson was here and 3 days, all those, Iran had its petrodollars and all was good. There was this flirtation with the left that Iran is still sort of rather obsessed with. And the rhetoric of, the clerics, who I said they do know, they have their finger on the pulse of Iranians. So that, in a way, was a middle-class intellectual supported by some of the other groups, like the IRA, like the PLO, those days when they were Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. They were not, Islamist Palestinian movements, the Red Brigade, and so on and so forth. And this momentum builds that, monarchy is not it. We need to move on from this. So that was, and of course, the figure of Khomeini, and don't forget, there was external support. I mean, France and Britain and all of that, and Jimmy Carter. I mean, he did us no favors. So all of this, it's a different situation. In 1978, Iranian passport was probably better than what a Norwegian passport is now. You could go anywhere without a visa. The money you could spend. and it was beginning to change. It was beginning to progress. Now it is they are fighting with their hands tied behind their back.
Okay.
It is different. And Iran is a much bigger country. It has many more existential threats. Environment, I mean, water, my goodness.
Yeah.
It is, never mind, the Ayatollahs being the end of us. Running out of water will be the end of half the population. All those are there. It's very different. As for the Shah's son, I think, of course, this has been so hard for a lot of Iranians. It's sort of really split up all these groups. The fact is, he has brand recognition.
Right.
He himself, has not lived in Iran, has not been a political activist throughout his years of exile, but he has brand recognition, and he harks back to the times when we were no less than Turkey no less than Assad.
But do people want to see him in charge? Do they are they clinging to his name because he is the only name out there, because there's no other leader of the opposition?
He is the catalyst for change. He is not going to rule Iran. Iran is not going to vote for monarchy, even though that we are forever ruled. I mean, we cannot forget, it's either crown or the turban. It has always been that, dynamic forever, for 5,000 years in Iran. So, but I don't think so, because what's he going to do? He goes, even if he turns up to Tehran tomorrow, he won't even be able to find out where a house that he grew up in is, a palace he grew up in. Yeah. So but he has somehow given a ray of hope that it is possible.
Right.
But he's not going to be able to do it on his own.
Narguess Farzad, that was fascinating, and I'm sure we'll speak again. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining the Fourcast. And that's it from the Fourcast. This is a running story. It is an important story. We will continue to cover it. Thanks very much.